Imagine this. You wake up, not in your bed, not in your home, but somewhere else entirely. The air smells different, earthy, smoky. There's no hum of electricity, no ticking clock. Just the distant sound of church bells ringing across a quiet village. You open your eyes and realize you're lying on a straw mattress covered in rough wool blankets. Outside, wooden carts creak down muddy paths. People are already at work chopping wood, milking cows, carrying buckets of water, and there's not a single smartphone or light switch in sight. Welcome to medieval Europe. The year is somewhere between the 10th and 15th century. The world is ruled by kings, lords, and the church. Society is built on a strict hierarchy, from the lowly peasant to the powerful monarch. And now, you're part of it. But how would you survive? What if you had to live through brutal winters, dangerous diseases, and constant threats of war? In this video, we're going to explore what it would really be like if you suddenly found yourself transported back in time to the Middle Ages. Now, who are you in this world? Are you a lowly peasant, working long hours under the hot sun for scraps of bread? Or maybe you're born into nobility, living in a grand castle, managing land, and making political decisions. Perhaps you wake up as a young squire training to become a knight. Or maybe you find yourself dressed in robes, serving the church as a monk or priest. Each role comes with its own set of rules, responsibilities, and risks. And trust me, life in medieval times was anything but easy. Let's say you're a peasant. Your day starts at dawn. You'll work from sunrise to sunset, tilling the land, feeding animals, and hoping your harvest is enough to survive the winter. But disease is everywhere. Without modern medicine, even a small cut could kill you, and if the plague comes to your village, there's little you can do but pray. Or imagine waking up as a knight. You've trained for years, mastering swords and horses. You wear heavy armor and ride into battle for your lord, risking your life for honor and land. But even knights weren't safe. A single arrow or sword strike could end everything, and many didn't live past 30. As a noble, you might live in luxury compared to others. You eat meat every day, sleep in a warm bed, and command armies. But power brings danger. One wrong move, and you could lose everything, or worse, be executed for treason. And if you woke up as a member of the clergy, your life would be devoted to God. You'd study, teach, and help the poor, all while navigating the powerful influence of the church. So, what if you woke up in medieval times? Would you thrive or struggle? In the next few minutes, we'll dive deeper into each of these lives and uncover what daily life was really like in the Middle Ages. Stay with us and don't forget to relax. This is Boring History for Sleep. You wake up again, the second morning in this strange new world. Outside, roosters crow and the village begins to stir. There's no alarm clock, just the rhythm of nature and the sounds of people preparing for another hard day's work. You pull back your wool blanket and step onto the cold wooden floor. No soft carpet, no warm socks, just the chill of early morning seeping through the cracks in the walls. You stretch, yawn, and take a deep breath. The air is crisp, filled with wood smoke and the scent of fresh bread baking somewhere nearby. There's no toothbrush, no soap, and definitely no hot shower. If you're lucky, you might splash some water on your face from a bucket pulled from the well outside. Clean clothes? Maybe if you have a second tunic. Most people wear the same outfit every day. Washing them is a chore that takes hours. Your clothing is simple, a rough wool or linen tunic, tied at the waist with a rope or cloth belt. In winter, you add layers, thick cloaks, scarves, and gloves made from scraps of fabric or animal hide. Breakfast is usually just bread and onions. Sometimes cheese, if it hasn't gone bad. Milk is rare. Cows are valuable for ploughing, not milking. And coffee, tea, forget it. Water is the drink of choice. Though many prefer ale or beer to avoid the risk of disease in untreated water. Food is simple, filling, and repetitive. Meat is mostly reserved for special occasions or the wealthy. Spices like pepper and cinnamon are expensive luxuries. Most meals are seasoned with salt, garlic, or onions. As a peasant, your job depends on the season. In spring and summer, you'll be in the fields, planting seeds, pulling weeds, or harvesting crops. In winter, you fix tools, chop wood, or help build structures. Most people live in small villages, under the control of a local lord. You owe him labour, often several days a week, in exchange for the right to farm a small plot of land for yourself. Tools are simple wooden ploughs pulled by oxen, iron sickles, hand mills for grinding grain. Everything is done manually. There's no electricity, no machines, no refrigeration. If something breaks, you fix it. If it's lost, you make another one. Life runs on sweat, skill, and survival. Bathing is rare. Not because people didn't care about cleanliness, they did, but because it was dangerous. Cold water could make you sick. Public baths were sometimes available in cities, but they were breeding grounds for disease. People used herbs, vinegar, or rose water to mask smells. Teeth were blackened with decay. Sugar is a luxury only nobles can afford, but bread and honey wear down enamel all the same. Washing your hands before eating? That's not really a thing yet. Soap is made from animal fat and ash useful, but not widely used except among the wealthy. At midday, you stop for a short break. Another piece of bread, maybe some dried fish or stew. Food is plain, filling, and repetitive. Meat is mostly reserved for the rich. Spices are expensive. Pepper and cinnamon come from faraway lands and cost more than gold. Most meals are seasoned with salt, garlic, or onions. If you're lucky, you might find wild berries or mushrooms in the forest. But beware, many plants are poisonous, and there's no internet to double check. As the sun sets, the village grows quiet. There's no electric light, just candles and oil lamps. Fire is precious and dangerous. Many homes have open hearths where food is cooked and warmth comes from burning wood. Dinner is much like breakfast: bread, soup, maybe a few vegetables grown in the garden. You eat quickly and go to bed early. There's little to do after dark, and sleep is your best escape from hunger, pain, or worry. Outside, the wind howls gently through the trees. Inside, embers glow softly in the fire pit. You lie down on your straw mattress, pull the wool blanket over your shoulders, and close your eyes. Tomorrow will be another long day. So imagine living like this every single day. No modern comforts, no quick fixes, just hard work, simple food, and long hours under the sun. In the next chapter, we'll explore who you'd be in this world, whether you're born into nobility, forced into serfdom, or trained to become a knight. But for now, let's take a moment to breathe in the smoke, feel the cold stone floor beneath your feet, and remember, this is life in the Middle Ages. Stay with us. This is Boring History for Sleep. So far, we've explored what daily life would be like if you woke up in medieval times, from waking up cold to working long hours, eating simple food, and going to bed early. But who are you in this world? Because in the Middle Ages, your life wasn't just about personal choices. It was shaped by birth, status, and the rigid social structure that ruled everything. In this chapter, let's dive into the four main groups of medieval society: the peasants, the nobles, the knights, and the clergy, and discover how each lived, worked, and survived. Most people in medieval Europe were peasants, also known as serfs or villeins. You didn't own land, you didn't have much freedom, but you did have work, lots of it. As a peasant, you owed labor to your local lord. This meant working on his land several days a week, plus paying taxes in the form of food, money, or goods. In return, he offered protection, at least in theory. Your home was a small wooden hut with a thatched roof. No glass windows, just wooden shutters or cloth coverings. Your family slept together on straw mattresses, often alongside animals to keep warm in winter. You worked sunrise to sunset, planting crops, harvesting, herding animals, fixing tools. And even though you grew the food, much of it went to the Lord or the church. Life was hard, but it was predictable. Most peasants never travelled more than a few miles from their village. Marriage, children, and death all happened within the same community. Above the peasants sat the nobility lords, barons, dukes, and kings. These were the powerful few who owned land, commanded armies, and made decisions that affected thousands. If you woke up as a noble, your life would be very different. Instead of farming, you'd live in a stone castle or manor house. You'd eat meat every day, sleep in a feather bed, and wear fine clothes made of silk and velvet. But power came with danger. One wrong move could cost you everything. Accusations of treason, betrayal, or rebellion were common, and punishments were harsh. Nobles often married for political reasons, not love. Their lives were luxurious, but rarely free. Nobles also had responsibilities. They provided land and protection to peasants, managed estates, collected taxes, and fought in wars when called upon by the king. If you woke up as a young boy born into nobility, there was a chance you'd be trained to become a knight, the elite warriors of the medieval world. Training started young, around age 7. Boys were sent away to another noble household to serve as pages. There they learned manners, horsemanship, swordplay, and the code of chivalry. At 14, they became squires' personal attendants to a knight. They cleaned armour, sharpened swords, and practiced combat daily. If they proved themselves brave and loyal, they could be dubbed a knight, usually around age 21. Knights wore heavy armour weighing over 50 pounds. They rode horses into battle, jousted in tournaments, and pledged loyalty to their lord through oaths of fealty. But knighthood wasn't easy. Battles were deadly. Many knights died before reaching 30, and while some gained land and titles, others spent their lives serving without reward. The final major group in medieval society was the clergy, monks, priests, bishops, and nuns who served the church. If you woke up in a monastery or convent, your life would revolve around prayer, study, and service. Monks copied books by hand, preserved ancient knowledge, and ran hospitals or schools. Priests led local parishes, conducted mass, and guided the spiritual lives of villagers. Bishops and cardinals held great power, advising kings and shaping laws. The church was the largest landowner in Europe and played a central role in daily life. Everyone attended church regularly. Religious festivals marked the seasons. Even justice was often handled by the church. For many, joining the clergy was a path to education, influence, or escape from hardship. But obedience and celibacy were required, and questioning church authority could lead to punishment. So imagine being born into one of these roles: a peasant bound to the land, a noble trapped by politics, a knight risking life and limb, or a monk living a life of faith and discipline. In the Middle Ages, your place in society shaped everything: what you ate, where you lived, who you married, and even how you died. In the next chapter, we'll explore the beliefs, myths, and traditions that filled medieval life, from superstitions to religious rituals, and everything in between. So far, we've explored daily life in medieval times, from waking up cold, working long hours, and sleeping early, to understanding the rigid social structure that shaped every person's fate. But life wasn't just about survival. It was also about belief in gods, spirits, omens, and magic. In the Middle Ages, culture and faith were deeply intertwined. Whether you were a peasant in a muddy village or a noble in a grand castle, you lived by traditions passed down through generations. In this chapter, let's explore what people believed, how they celebrated, and why even the most powerful feared a curse more than a sword. Religion was at the center of everything. The church wasn't just a place of worship, it was a political force, a hospital, a school, and often a court of law. Everyone attended Mass regularly. Birth, marriage, death, all were blessed by priests. Saints were worshipped like heroes, each believed to protect certain parts of life. Sailors prayed to Saint Nicholas, mothers to Saint Anne. Confession was essential. People believed that sin could send them straight to hell, and no one wanted to face eternal punishment. Even kings ruled by divine right, chosen by God himself. To rebel against a monarch was seen as rebellion against God. Alongside religion, superstition ran deep. People believed in witches, ghosts, demons, and curses. A black cat crossing your path could mean bad luck. A sneeze during prayer might be a sign of illness or evil spirits. Charms and talismans were common. People wore herbs, stones, or prayers written on parchment to ward off danger. Some believed garlic could protect against evil, a belief that may have inspired vampire legends. Witches weren't always old women stirring cauldrons. Sometimes they were healers or midwives who knew too much and were blamed when things went wrong. If someone fell ill or died suddenly, someone had to be punished. And so, many innocent people were accused of witchcraft, often women, and faced harsh judgment. Despite the hardships, medieval life wasn't all work and worry. There were festivals, lots of them. Each season brought its own celebration. At Christmas, villagers feasted on roasted meats and drank spiced wine. At Easter, there were processions, egg hunts, and joyous church services. Harvest festivals marked the end of the growing season, a time to give thanks and enjoy the fruits of labour before winter came. Jousting tournaments were not just battles, they were public spectacle. Nobles dressed in their finest clothes to watch knights charge at full speed, lances raised, hoping to win honour, land, or a lady's favour. Music, dance, and storytelling filled the nights. Bards travelled from town to town, sharing tales of bravery, love, and tragedy. Legends were passed down through generations. Stories of brave knights slaying dragons, cursed castles haunted by ghosts, and magical swords that only the worthy could wield. King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table were among the most famous symbols of chivalry, loyalty, and destiny. Dragons were said to live in caves or atop mountains, guarding treasure. Werewolves roamed under full moons, and some believed in fairies, small, magical beings who could grant wishes or cast spells. These stories weren't just entertainment, they taught lessons, warned of dangers, and gave meaning to a world full of uncertainty. So imagine living in a world where faith, fear, and folklore shaped your every decision, where a simple sneeze could mean a curse, and a saint's blessing could save your soul. In the next chapter, we'll explore the darker side of medieval life, disease, medicine, and the constant threat of death. So far, we've explored what it would be like to wake up in medieval times, from the cold mornings and hard labour to the rigid social structure and rich cultural traditions. But life in the Middle Ages was also full of danger. Without modern medicine, even small wounds could become deadly, illnesses spread quickly, and death was never far away. In this chapter, let's explore what people did when they got sick, how they treated disease, and why so many didn't live past their 30s. Medieval medicine wasn't based on science, it was based on belief. Doctors followed the teachings of ancient scholars like Galen, who believed the body was ruled by 4 humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. To balance these humours, treatments included bleeding patients with leeches, giving them laxatives, or making them sweat in hot baths. Sometimes, all 3 at once. Herbs were widely used: garlic for infection, sage for pain, rosemary for memory. Monks in monasteries grew healing gardens and wrote medical manuscripts, preserving knowledge through the centuries. But not all treatments were helpful. Some doctors prescribed powdered dragon bones for fever, which were just crushed animal teeth. Others told patients to drink warm wine mixed with powdered pearls. Disease was everywhere. Poor sanitation, crowded cities, and lack of clean water made illness spread like wildfire. One of the deadliest was the Black Death bubonic plague. It arrived in Europe in the 1340s and killed over 1/3 of the population. Victims developed swollen, painful lymph nodes called buboes, then died within days. Other common illnesses included dysentery, bloody diarrhea, tuberculosis, a slow killer of lungs, and leprosy, which caused disfiguring sores. Lepers were often cast out from society, forced to live in isolated colonies. Smallpox, measles, and influenza also ravaged villages. Children were especially vulnerable. Many didn't survive past age 5. And there was no cure, no antibiotics, no vaccines, just prayers, charms, and hope. For women, childbirth was one of the greatest risks of all. There were no hospitals, no anesthesia, and no understanding of infection. Most births happened at home, attended by midwives who used herbal remedies and prayers. If complications arose like breech birth or heavy bleeding, there was little that could be done. Infant mortality was high. 1 in every 3 children died before their first birthday. Many mothers died too from infections, hemorrhage, or exhaustion. Still, families kept having children, hoping at least one son and one daughter would survive to carry on the family name. Death was part of daily life. People saw bodies lying in homes, carried through streets, buried in mass graves. The church played a central role in death rituals. Priests gave last rites to the dying. Bells rang for the dead. Prayers were said to ease the soul's journey to heaven. Graves were shallow, sometimes reused. In cities, bodies were stacked like firewood in charnel houses. People feared purgatory, a place where souls suffered until sins were forgiven. So families paid priests to say masses for the dead, hoping to shorten their time in torment. And some believed the dead could return as ghosts, omens, or curses. So imagine living in a world where a cut could kill, a sneeze could mean plague, and childbirth was a gamble with death. Despite the dangers, people found ways to heal, to pray, and to survive. They passed down remedies, honored the dead, and hoped for a better life after death. In the next chapter, we'll explore war, justice, and the brutal realities of violence in the Middle Ages. So far, we've explored what it would be like to wake up in medieval times from the cold mornings and hard labor, to the rigid social structure, cultural traditions, and the ever-present danger of disease and death. But there was another danger that loomed over every life war. In the Middle Ages, war wasn't just fought on distant battlefields. It came to your village. It burned your home. It took your sons, your brothers, your fathers, and often never gave them back. And if you weren't fighting, you could still suffer the consequences through taxes, conscription, or the harsh justice of the time. In this chapter, let's explore the brutal realities of medieval warfare, the terrifying world of castles under siege, and the harsh punishments that kept order or tried to. War was constant in the Middle Ages. Kings fought for land, nobles for power, and peasants were caught in the middle. If you were a peasant, you might be forced to fight for your lord, not because you wanted to, but because you had no choice. You were born into duty. Battles were brutal. There were no helmets for most soldiers, no body armor, just wooden shields, crude swords, and hope. Archers rained arrows from above. Knights charged with lances, crashing into enemy lines like thunder. And when the dust settled, the dead were left where they fell or burned in mass graves. Castles were the ultimate symbol of power and the battlegrounds of many wars. When a castle was under siege, life became a nightmare. Food ran out, disease spread, and every day could be your last. Defenders poured boiling oil over walls. They dropped rocks, launched flaming arrows, and prayed for help to arrive. Attackers dug tunnels under walls, filled them with firewood, and collapsed entire towers. Some even used catapults to hurl diseased bodies over the walls, one of the first forms of biological warfare. If the castle fell, no one was spared. Men were killed, women and children were sold into slavery, and the castle was burned to the ground. In a world without police, courts, or prisons, justice was harsh and often terrifying. Laws were controlled by nobles and the church. If you were accused of a crime, theft, witchcraft, treason, you had no lawyers, no trial by jury, just a test of pain and faith. Trial by ordeal was common. If you were accused of a crime, you might be forced to carry a red-hot iron bar in your bare hand. If you survived without infection, it was seen as proof of innocence. Others were thrown into water if they floated. They were guilty of witchcraft. If they sank, they drowned. Justice wasn't about truth, it was about faith, fear, and survival. Punishments were cruel. Public executions were common, meant to scare people into obedience. Thieves had their hands cut off. Traitors were hanged, drawn, and quartered, a slow, painful death meant to serve as a warning. Even children could be punished. A boy as young as 7 could be sentenced for stealing bread. Prisons were rare. Most punishment was meant to be swift and terrifying. For some, war was a way of life. Soldiers trained from childhood, lived by the sword, and died by it. Mercenaries fought for gold, knights fought for honor, land, or a lady's love, and peasants were just trying to survive. Being a soldier meant long campaigns, cold nights, and little pay. It meant watching friends die beside you and knowing your turn would come soon enough. But for many, it was the only way to escape poverty. Some soldiers even rose to become nobles themselves. So imagine living in a world where war could come to your doorstep at any moment, where justice was brutal and punishment was public. In the next chapter, we'll reflect on what we've learned and compare medieval life to the modern world. So far, we've walked through the cold mornings of a peasant's life, felt the weight of armor on a knight's shoulders, prayed in candlelit churches, danced at harvest festivals, feared disease and death, and watched as war came to the doorstep of every home. We've seen how justice was brutal, how power was absolute, and how survival meant everything. Now, let's pause for a moment. Let's look back not just at history, but at ourselves, because understanding the past helps us understand who we are today. Medieval life was hard. There were no vaccines, no antibiotics, no clean water systems. Disease could wipe out entire villages. A single cut could kill you. There were no police, no lawyers, no fair trials. Justice was often cruel, based more on faith than fact. Social class was fixed from birth. You were born a peasant, and you died a peasant. Nobles ruled, knights fought. The church guided and sometimes controlled everything. But so much has changed. Today, we have medicine that saves lives. We have laws that protect people. We have education, technology, and rights that many in the Middle Ages could only dream of. We can travel across the world in a day. We can speak to anyone with the press of a button. We live longer, healthier lives, all thanks to science, progress, and the slow march of human development. And yet, some things haven't changed at all. People still fight wars, families still suffer loss, power still corrupts, and fear still drives decisions, just like it did in the Middle Ages. Superstition may be gone from our hospitals, but it still lives in our myths, our fears, and even our politics. The need for community, love, faith, and hope, those things never went away. They helped people survive then, and they keep us going now. Even the way we tell stories through bards, scrolls, and songs is echoed in our movies, books, and podcasts today. We still gather around fires, whether literal or digital, to share tales of bravery, tragedy, and wonder. We still celebrate holidays, honor traditions, and remember the past, just like villagers lighting candles in the dark. So imagine living in a world where your fate was decided at birth, where a sneeze could mean plague, where faith and fear shaped your every choice. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that one mistake, a wound, a word spoken out of turn, a false accusation could cost you everything. Now imagine waking up again this time, in your own bed, in your own time. You have clean water, food on the table, lights that turn on with a switch, medicine in your cabinet, and a future full of possibilities. That's what makes history so powerful. It reminds us how far we've come and how much further we can go. History isn't just about the past. It's about learning who we are by understanding where we came from. Imagine this. You close your eyes for just a moment. The embers in the hearth glow softly. The candlelight flickers against the wooden beams above. The voices of villagers fade into the night air. A knight removes his helmet one last time. A monk sets down his quill. A mother tucks her child into bed. And then, everything fades away. You wake up again, not in a cold wooden hut, but in your own warm bed. There's no smell of smoke or sound of church bells, just the quiet hum of the modern world around you. Your lights turn on with the flick of a switch, water flows from a tap, food is in the fridge, and medicine is just a phone call away. That's the gift of history. It reminds us how far we've come and how much we still have to learn. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. Whether you imagined yourself as a peasant, noble, knight, or clergyman, I hope you gained a deeper appreciation for the challenges and triumphs of life centuries ago. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and leave a comment telling me which role you choose in medieval times. What part of daily life fascinated you the most? Was it the food, the festivals, the battles, or the quiet moments by the fire? This is Boring History 1 for Sleep. Until next time, sleep well. Dream of castles, knights, and embers floating in the air. Good night.